you for coming. My name is Joel Benin. I'm professor of Middle East history at Stanford University. I'm speaking here today on behalf of the Portland chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace. The Palestinian Great March of Return, which began on March 30th of this year, is ongoing. It is a series of unarmed weekly demonstrations, and they began as a popular mobilization of people in the Gaza Strip, initiated by politically unaligned young women and men. Contrary to Israel's claims, the demonstrations were not organized or called for by Hamas. However, Hamas has used its political and logistical dominance to attempt to control and direct the demonstrations, despite the objections of the organizers. The campaign of demonstrations has made two demands. One, that Israel and Egypt lift the decade-long siege of the Gaza Strip, and two, that Palestinian refugees be allowed to return to their homes. Over 2/3 of Gaza's 1.9 million inhabitants are refugees from the 1948 Arab-Israeli War or their descendants. One Gazan supporter of the protest articulated a much more modest goal. We only want to make our voices heard. We want them to know that there are human beings living here, just like everywhere else, with dreams, just like everywhere else, he said. Conditions in the Gaza Strip are horrific. 97% of the tap water is undrinkable because of sewage pollution or high salinity levels. The unemployment rate is 44%. 40% of Gazan children suffer from anemia and malnutrition. Israel severely restricts food aid entering the territory. Israel has forbidden Gazans to access about 17% of their territory, including 1/3 of the Gaza Strip's agricultural land. Entry and exit from the Gaza Strip is controlled by Israel with assistance from Egypt. Since the Great March of Return protests in Gaza began, and until July 19th, Israeli forces have shot dead 152 Palestinians and wounded 16,499, of which 8,598 have been hospitalized. Nearly all these killings and injuries were carried out by Israeli snipers operating under rules of engagement that allow the use of lethal force against non-combatants. On June 13th, a UN General Assembly resolution condemned Israel's excessive use of force by a vote of 120 to 8. Individual UN officials, as well as Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem have also issued condemnations. During this period, a total of 8 Israelis have been injured by Palestinians, mostly minor issues and none fatal. Why is all this of special concern to Portlanders and to Blazer fans? A May 15, 2017 article in the online newsletter Israel Defense reports that the Israel Defense Forces ground arm chose the Leupold Mark VI, manufactured by the Leupold and Stevens Corporation in Beaverton, as their telescopic sight of choice for ground forces snipers. The article reports that the IDF recently acquired 800 units of the new Leupold Mark VI, and that they would be in service by the end of 2017. Under the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, Leupold and Stevens is obligated to practice due diligence to assure that its products are not used in violation of international law. Israel's rules of engagement violated international law as stated in the 1923 Hague Rules of Aerial Warfare and the Fourth Geneva Convention. Firing on unarmed demonstrators violates the United Nations basic principles on the use of force and firearms by law enforcement officials. Portland Jewish Voice for Peace is proud to join the Democratic Socialists of America and other allies in demanding that the Portland Trailblazers end their corporate partnership with Leupold and Stevens until such time as Leupold and Stevens can certify that the scopes it has supplied to the Israel Defense Forces are not being used to kill unarmed civilians or for other violations of international law. Thank you.